If something non-human appeared in your closet, would you befriend it? Or if you discover a home in the middle of nowhere with no windows or doors, would you still try to break in? Well, in the series that we'll be covering today, someone will have to face those questions, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the Obelisk videos found on the channel Lizardmeninc. This series has unsettling environments and even creepier entities with a fascinating story which hooks the viewer to continue watching, and there's many theories on what exactly is going on in that story, and today I'll share with you those theories. Is this a story connected to a young child's death, or potentially a story of someone becoming unrecognizable as they grow up? In order to find out, and if you're interested, please stick around, don't get lost in any of the dark hallways or follow the sounds of crying, and as always, my name is Estrella. Let's explore. Obelisk, my new friend. In the first video, the protagonist communicates with the viewer through text, and they tell us that they made a new friend who oddly enough takes shelter in their closet. This friend doesn't like being watched, but the protagonist still managed to capture a glimpse of them through the slits on the closet door, and once the protagonist gets up and opens it, unexpectedly it was found empty inside, besides the hanging clothes, meaning this friend is obviously not normal if they can easily vanish like that. Following this incident, the protagonist goes on to watch TV, and they tell us that sometimes the friend joins them, to which we hear a banging noise in the background that I'm assuming is the friend. After this, the protagonist points their camera up the stairs, then switches to a scene back inside the bedroom, to which shockingly the closet door is open, and we can see this new friend almost fully. And honestly, I'm not sure how to describe its appearance, since it was still pretty obscure, but it was still unsettling to say the least. Anyways, once it noticed the camera was on it, it seemed to have retreated and it just peeked from the darkness. This is where the video concludes, and turning to the description, it has a single word, which reads pilfer. Pilfer meaning to steal, and usually things that are of little value. What's the significance of this? Not sure just yet. Maybe this odd friend is a bit of a thief, but that's just an initial assumption. However, something that I can say for certain is that I believe that the protagonist is someone on the younger side due to the fact that they seem very gullible and innocent and not reacting in a way that an adult would when encountering an odd creature in their closet. An adult would obviously be alarmed by this, yet this main character was very open to having this friendship despite how unsettling the circumstances are. Not only that, but they were watching cartoons, which I know adults can watch too, but I'm pretty sure the scene was to make it obvious that the one holding the camera is a child. Then again, aren't things inside closets supposed to scare children? Whatever. With that, let's now proceed on to the next video. Obelisk, you're almost gone. We open with a view of a dark hallway that leads to a door at the end that soon gets opened by a disturbing-looking humanoid that slowly crouches down. As it lowers, its head gets censored, and then the footage abruptly changes to outside with a view of an open door. And honestly, with how it looks, it almost seems like a portal because we don't exactly see the walls attached to the door. But anyways, the next shot is of a long-limbed creature whose height matches the trees beside it, and there was even a close-up on its feet, I believe. After this, we return back to the footage from the hallway, and the door that was in the middle was opened. Odd noises could be heard in the background, and this is where the video ends. A pretty simple yet disturbing video in which the description only says, "Oddities found." Now, something I find interesting from this video is the door. As I mentioned before, my assumption is that the door is some type of portal or gateway. To be specific, they lead to a location in which these oddities can be found, and the reason why in the first video the closet creature was able to appear then disappear while in the closet is because a portal is there. So that's a fun little connection that might be possible. That's all I have to say regarding this video, who knows for sure. With that, let's now keep going. Obelisk, in your home. It opens with a view of a bedroom, and odd noises could be heard in the background, which I assume woke up the protagonist, who I believe is someone new because the bedroom doesn't look the same as in the first video. The protagonist then proceeds to get up from their bed and look towards their door, in which there was a chair against the doorknob, likely to prevent anything from coming in. That chair was soon moved, and the protagonist starts walking around their home until eventually they arrived at a crib that was empty. And at this point, I believe the background noises is supposed to be mimicking the sounds of a baby crying, but it was a little hard to tell at moments. Regardless, the protagonist then realized that there was a pale face at a doorway, and they stared at each other for a few seconds until eventually the mysterious figure pushed forward, and we can immediately notice their long limbs and star-shaped upper half. Proceeding after this, the screen turned black before returning back to a view of that same room, however in black and white, and slowly we see the oddity from before standing in that same doorway with text below it that reads, "The doors were locked." And coincidentally, that text could also be found in the description, and this is where the video ends. As for my thoughts on this video, I find it stupid how this protagonist, who's likely a parent, barricaded themselves in their room and left their baby outside. If they felt threatened enough to barricade themselves, why not take their baby with them? So it's completely understandable that when this creature discovered that the door to the parent's room was locked, in response it decided to mimic a baby's cry in order to lure the parent outside, and it was natural selection from there. With that, let's now proceed on to the next video. Obelisk, the house with no windows. This is the longest video in the series so far, and it opens with footage of someone outside, and on the screen is text from who I assume is the video's protagonist, and they explain to the viewer that they discovered an abandoned house. We quickly get shown this house, and noticeably it's yellow, and interestingly enough, there's an obelisk close by. By the way, to explain what an obelisk is, it's basically a tall pillar with a pyramid top, and it can symbolize power, immortality, connection between heaven and earth, and religious beliefs. It can even be a historic landmark. If this information can be potentially important for later, then let's keep that in the back of our minds. Now returning back to the video, unexpectedly the obelisk vanished from sight, and even the protagonist points out that there aren't any other structures or homes near that house, which adds to the strangeness. But anyways, this house is obviously in the middle of nowhere, and while walking around it was quickly discovered that there's no doors or windows, meaning there are no obvious ways inside, but eventually a flat piece of wood was found against the home, and after moving it revealed a crawl space. Filled with a sense of adventure, the protagonist of course goes into that crawl space until they found an opening into the home from the floor. Now inside the home, the protagonist was hit by the smell of burnt matches, and as they turned the corner from the room they were in, they saw an unexpected sight of a dinner table on the ceiling. It's pretty odd, but they don't stick around in that area for too long, and the protagonist goes to the other hallway. At the end was an extremely tall door that leads deeper into the home, and shockingly, most of the lights were still functioning. There's electricity? Oh my gosh. At some point, the protagonist hit a fork in the road, or I guess hallway, in which one of the paths had something peeking from the doorway before hiding away. This made it easy for the protagonist to decide that that path is probably not the best to take, so they went the other way to avoid that creeper. And it led to a hallway with a glass door that opens to what I believe is an art room with a few desks. There's also a plaque on the wall that reads, "Be still and know that I am God." Pretty fascinating stuff, but the protagonist is going to keep pushing forward, and there was more hallways the further they walked. And at the end of one of these hallways was another fork in the road, or hallway, in which there was a staircase with a cross above the doorway. But it seemed like the stairs led nowhere, so the only option was the dark hallway next to it. But the protagonist decided not to go that way and return back to where they came from, but then they discovered a door. The door was oddly placed since it was high up from the ground, but moving on, the footage then switches away to a scene that we've seen before in the video, but in slow motion, and it's of that creeper peeking from the doorway. There's also text below it in red that reads, "What are you? I know your face." And this is where the video ends. I know your face can also be found in the description of the video, but anyways, as me and many other commenters pointed out, it's almost like the tables have been turned, and this human camera operator is potentially seen as this threatening house invader to the actual monster that's living in that home. And if my assumption is correct, maybe the red text is from that creeper, and there's a chance that they don't know what a human is, since they did ask the question, "What are you?" So of course they would be a little defensive and hide away once they were spotted. However, when they said, "I know your face," I guess that means there's some familiarity between the camera operator and this creature, so they could have known each other before. And someone in the comment section made the guess that the child from the first video is the protagonist from this video, but grown up, and the creature that's in the home had to do a double take before recognizing the person. It's a pretty interesting theory. Other things that should be pointed out from this video is that the protagonist mentioned the smell of burnt matches when first entering the home, which apparently could be associated with the devil's presence. In addition to that, we see religious themes such as the cross above the staircase and that sign that says, "Be still and know that I am God." That is actually a quote that's meant to encourage both stillness and recognition of God's presence and power. It's also a call to rest, surrender, and trust in God even during challenging moments. With these things found in the home, it leads to many having the assumption that the creature is religious, which also leads to the next assumption that this creature is just trying to live a normal life in their home when suddenly this intruder interrupted their peaceful existence. It's almost humorous if that really is the case. Anyways, and then there's the obelisk that we saw in the beginning, which could symbolize a connection between heaven and earth, but maybe it can also be a connection between other realms and earth, and that's why it appeared. They're basically markers to indicate when there's things that could give access to other realms. How fun! With that, let's now move on to the final video in the series as of this date. Obelisk, why do you keep us here? The video opens with a view of a gate for a graveyard and white text that reads, "She is in here somewhere." The The camera that gets taken into the graveyard, and there were a few moments where the surroundings were scanned before eventually arriving at a crib with unexpectedly a caterpillar inside. Another unexpected sight is the camera operator's shadow, which resembles that star-headed creeper we've saw before in a previous video. After this, the screen turned dark and we see more text that reads, "You're not how I remembered you, Abby." After this, we transition to a familiar room with a crib and first see a stained floor before focusing on the doorway where the creeper was last seen in. However, it wasn't dark and it appeared to be a small, empty closet space. The camera operator then approaches the window, to which we see a view from outside and more text that reads, "Why do you keep me here?" which was then followed by, "I can't stay here." The closet space then turned dark and the camera operator started to walk away and was seemingly followed by that odd entity. Luckily, they arrived at a room in which they barricaded themselves inside with a chair against the door, and they proceeded to lay down on the bed while odd noises could be heard outside, like mumbling or whimpering along with music. The scene then turned dark and the final text reads, "Please forgive me." That's where the video ends, and going to the description, it reads, "Is it really you?" This whole video has a lot of interesting implications, and let's first begin with the caterpillar in the crib. Caterpillars usually represent transformations, and when a caterpillar goes through metamorphosis, it's practically unrecognizable. So this Abby person looks different because they changed significantly, probably because they were last seen as a child and then they grew up, if that's a main assumption going on here, because the crib, you know, that's where babies are, and like metamorphosis, growing up into an adult. It's like, I'm rambling, sorry. Anyways, as for the shadow we saw, clearly the creature from the In Your Home video is the one who failed to recognize Abby initially, and as the video continues, we learn that there's a chance this entity is keeping the camera operator trapped in that home, which could either be Abby or someone closely associated with her. I'll go more into detail about this in the conclusion, so let's go. Conclusion. There's a few theories that I've gathered that could explain what is happening in this story. First theory, the star-headed entity befriended Abby when she was younger and likely eliminated her guardian for whatever reason. Abby was then taken away, and a lot of time has passed before the entity and Abby reunited, but because she grew up, and obviously is different, the entity didn't recognize her at first, but once it finally clicked in their mind, they didn't want Abby to be taken away from them again, so they trapped her inside that home. That's the first theory. Second theory, Abby was killed when she was younger, could be an accident or not, either by the entity or her guardian. Whatever happened, she died young, and remember how obelisks can be a connection between heaven and earth? There's a chance the entity is trying to find Abby in this in-between space, but now that she's no longer human, she's unrecognizable, so it took a while for the entity to realize it was her. So when it eventually found her, it trapped her because maybe there's an obsession with her, or a very extreme attachment to her. That's the second theory. Now the third theory. This is all symbolic, and instead of Abby not being recognized because she grew up and obviously looks different, but instead it's because she acts differently. Like imagine a person who was once good suddenly turning cruel. That's an example of someone being different and potentially unrecognizable. So with the caterpillar, that is supposed to symbolize Abby when she was young and innocent, and all the monsters that we've been seeing represent what she turned into, oddities that attack or hide away. These are the three main theories I see floating around when it comes to this series, and which one do I believe in more? Well, honestly, they all make sense to me, and there could be an argument made for each of them, so I couldn't exactly pick one, which is why I share them all. And there's a chance that, you know, you could still mismatch, nitpick something from one theory and then put it onto another theory. And who knows for certain if the main character, protagonist, camera operator is Abby. It could be someone associated with her. So, you know, yeah, that's what I'm rocking with right now. The only thing I know for certain is that there's potentially portals or locations linked to other realms, and these oddities are capable of forming friendships with humans, as we took note of in the first video, but they're also capable of being potentially hostile. With that, this is the Obelisk series found in the channel Lizardmeninc. Links are in the description, and if you have your own theories, please share them in the description. I'm always willing to listen. Additionally, since you made it this far, I hope that means you enjoyed this video, so please don't forget to like, subscribe, do the funny little notification thing, maybe follow my other social medias, leave a comment, and I better not catch you dying on me. Goodbye!